In this segment, we're going to repeat our lateral recumbent lumbar muscle energy, but in this case, we have a dysfunction that's type 2. So now our type 2 dysfunction is still going to be at L4, but it could be flexed or extended, and we'll talk about that as we set him up, but it's side bent right, rotated right. And the position is still determined right lateral recumbent by the rotational right component of this dysfunction. So, we again try to find and locate L4 on L5, and we're going to be flexing and extending his legs up and down again to get that. But depending on the flexion or extension component, you're basically going to say if it's flexed and he's free flexion, you're going to try to find the feather edge barrier of that L4 on 5 into extension. If it's extended, you're going to bring it up and find the feather edge barrier of the flexion. It's just a slight little few degree variation of hip flexion or extension. Okay. So let's say he's an extended dysfunction. I'll play here with his flexion barrier. And now I'm going to ask him to straighten his bottom leg out and just kind of keep him like this. This is kind of a classic position because if the patient is rotated to the right, in this case, and I let the leg hang off the table, that takes this pelvis in this direction and kind of exacerbates that rotational component and makes it more difficult for us to find that positioning. However, I'm going to show you another way that you can do this, especially with a side bending. If I have the leg off the table, it tends to side bend it more to the right, which is probably more the reason you'd keep the leg up. But I'm going to show you that with the leg off, how the physician can actually overcome that and even get better, finer tuning for this. But remember, for the side bending component, if I do hang over the leg off the table and you don't use your palpatory diagnostic skills for movement appropriately, then you've now increased the side bending right, which is the dysfunction. And therefore, it makes it more difficult to approach the side bending left barrier up top here. Okay? So, I have my segment. I've got him positioned like so to start. Take his arm, bring it back, and I'm just going to keep it like this. I try to palpate L4 and L5. I can see which way my two alternating movements are going. And now, because he's a type 2, meaning that the side bending and the rotation are the same direction, I have a rotational and side bending component both to the right side. So therefore, I have a side bending left barrier, which means in this case, I have to take my forearms and draw them together. And if I can't get the shoulder down, I can take this hand here, hook my hand into his antecubital fossa, and now with a little pressure on his pec and his antecubital fossa, I can help draw the shoulder down as well as this hand here pushing the pelvis up to accommodate that side bending left barrier. Now, with this, we also have our rotational component. So the rotation, just like in the type 1, is dealt with by drawing the pelvis forward and the shoulder backward. And now I combine all those to see the side bending and the rotation to make sure I get all the barriers, rotate to the left, and then rotate to the left and then side bend to the left, in this case with the type 2. And now I ask the patient to just push his shoulder forward and his hip back, and relax, and do that again, 3 to 5 seconds, and relax. Good. Or I can say to the patient, I want you to fight my push of the elbow here and push of the pelvis here, push into and try to separate your pelvis from your shoulder, and he's trying to open up his left side, and relax, and then I get a post-isometric closing down into that new restrictive barrier to the left. Now, if you look at this in this position, and you see how I'm trying to play with side bending, you can see how rigid his pelvis looks. This is why I personally, this is just me personally, believe that if I let his leg hang over, this is good for HVLA as well as muscle energy. If I let the leg hang over, I am opening this up and making it side bend to the right. And in the type 2 conditions, and this is what we did for type 1, but in type 2, the barrier is in this direction, heading towards each other, and I just opened it up. However, now watch how loose his pelvis is. He has some laxity. So if I come in here now and find my segment, position him the same way, my right hand now can draw his pelvis way up and get much more side bending than I did with the rigid leg in the popliteal fossa. So I still do it in this manner and follow the same rules. One of the mnemonics we can use with this in HVLA is that the directions that our forearms are approximating each other, if you have a type 1 dysfunction, one away. Forearms will go away from each other as you're doing your rotational component. So they're closed, and as you do your rotation, you'll pull them away. Type 1 away. If it's type 2, your control here on the shoulder and elbow, and then down here in the pelvis. Type 2, together. You're trying to push the pelvis and shoulder together to approximate your restrictive barriers. Okay, so 1 away, 2 together. Muscle energy, lateral recumbent, lumbar.